Family abandoned me because sis blames me for her divorce. Years later, I get an email out of nowhere explaining me everything with proof. So I ruined her life with it. Almost 7 years ago, my family cut me out of their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and wasn't financially stable enough to rent an apartment on my own, and what had happened was so sudden that I'd had no time to prepare myself for it at all, mentally or financially. The reason behind all of this was my sister. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close because of the significant age gap between us. She got married to her boyfriend, Pete, 39M, of 3 years when she was 27, and they were married for 3 years. They got divorced 3 years into their marriage because Hannah had accused Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I'd been living with my parents after college since I'd just started working, and I wanted to save some money before I moved out. My parents were okay with that arrangement as well, but that was only until my sister announced her divorce. She just came back home one day, crying hysterically, and announced that she'd filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months now. And then, she went on to throw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend, Emily, 28F, was trying to gain weight, and since Pete was a certified dietitian, he agreed to help her out. I had been the one to introduce her to him, and apparently, she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was shocked that this was happening because even though Emily and I weren't close, I knew for a fact that she was a good woman and would never get with a married man. Besides, cheating was so out of character for Pete as well. He was totally smitten with Hannah and only ever had good things to say about her, so I found it incredibly hard to believe that he'd cheated on her. I had my doubts, but my parents believed her instantly and didn't even question anything, in spite of the fact that she never had any proof of him cheating. They just took her word for it, but I'm not gonna hold that against them since they would choose their own daughter over their son-in-law, regardless of who was right. What I didn't understand was why they readily kicked me out just because Hannah said so. She just stormed in one day, threw a tantrum, and somehow convinced my parents to throw me out simply because I'd been the one to introduce Emily to Pete. She accused me of ruining her marriage, and my parents agreed with her, for some reason. I was devastated and tried to stop my parents, but they weren't ready to listen to me at all and told me that if I didn't leave then they'd forcefully kick me out. In just one day, I'd lost my family and my home and had absolutely no idea where to go. I was literally sobbing out on the sidewalk with all my stuff for an hour or so before I was able to pull myself together and went to a friend's house for the night. I tried contacting them every single day for the next few days but didn't have any luck. My friend was kind enough to let me live at his place until I was able to find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents had pretty much made up their minds that I was in the wrong here and I was the one responsible for the divorce. My mom and dad had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which didn't even make sense because it wasn't as if I'd been the one who Pete cheated with. They'd blocked my number so I couldn't get through to them at all, and when I tried to visit them, my mom threatened to call the cops on me if I didn't leave. So after that, I finally realized that they were serious about this and actually did blame me for whatever had happened. I don't think I had any reason to be surprised since my sister always had been the favorite child. My parents had never really planned for a second child, so I ended up always getting sidelined, and while I didn't care much for it growing up, I didn't know that it would lead to something so huge. Thinking about it now, I guess I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my place could have seen something like this coming. Anyway, I even tried to figure out things for myself to make sense of it all for the next couple of weeks since Hannah and my parents had practically cut me off altogether and I had no way to get to them. I couldn't speak to Pete either because he blocked me too, which didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't find him either because both Hannah and Pete had vacated the house they used to live in and had left to live with their respective parents instead. So I had no way to get through to anyone involved, which is why I approached my last resort to get to the truth, Emily. Like I said, Emily and I weren't really close, but I had to do what I had to do, so I just asked to meet her one day and explain the situation to her. I asked her if what Hannah had said about the affair was true, and she denied it vehemently. And I believed her, to be honest. Emily told me that she'd only ever met Pete a few times and only in a professional capacity, so there was absolutely nothing going on between them, and she had no idea why Hannah would say something so awful about her. She even told me that she'd had a steady boyfriend for a couple of years already and was planning to get hitched in a few months, too. She even showed me pictures, and what she'd told me was way more convincing than whatever Hannah had said. I had no proof, but I just knew somehow that Hannah had been lying about the real reason for the divorce. But since I had no proof, I couldn't go back to my family, and I most certainly couldn't go back without it. Back then, I was pretty desperate to go back to living with my family since I really missed them, despite what they'd done to me. With time, however, I was able to get over it and move on with my life. I managed to find a place and made my job the purpose of my life so that I'd have something to distract myself with. And I also had to pay the bills, so it was a better way of coping than just sitting around and being depressed since I didn't have any other option either. I was hurting a lot, but I knew I had to go on somehow, with or without my family's support. Years passed and now, I'm doing much better in life. I've moved from my tiny apartment to a much bigger one and even got engaged to my girlfriend of 2 years around a week ago. And our engagement post is what ended up being a game changer for me, because just a few days after that post, I received an email out of literally nowhere that not only explained the entire story of Hannah's divorce and needed but also had proof attached. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, usually only posted us on Instagram, but the picture from our engagement made it to her Facebook feed as well, where she had a wider audience. It was a public post as well, and a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law, Pete. He happened to be someone my fiancée had met at a seminar a few years back, since she was a doctor, and had ended up adding him on Facebook, which is how he found me. It really is a small world, and for the first time, I was glad about it. He reached out to me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he decided to send me an anonymous email. He explained later on that he did this just so that he wouldn't feel weird about what he was doing, since it had been several years since his divorce and he didn't want to seem like a sore loser who still hadn't managed to move on from what happened. Besides, he'd been the one to block me in the first place, so he felt weird and conscious about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years back. Coming to the contents of the email I received, it had the full story and proof of what had happened 7 years ago, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I went through it. So apparently, my sister had been the one cheating on Pete and not the other way around like she'd been telling us for so long. Not only was that a huge lie, but even more interesting was the fact that she'd been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just like she'd accused him. My friend Frank, 28M, was a cashier at the grocery store near Hannah's house back then, and I never would have made the connection myself since I'd literally never seen them together. I guess they'd kept it well under wraps, but not enough for Pete to not find out. And when Hannah was confronted, she told Pete that it was all my fault because I'd been the one to introduce her to Frank, and had even told her about how he needed her help since he was an aspiring singer and she was a pretty good singer herself. She'd agreed to help him, and bam, they'd fallen in love before they knew it. She even said that I was in on IT and had helped them keep things under wraps for so long. Obviously, all of this was a complete lie, and I hadn't even known that Frank and Hannah had something going on. He was outraged when he found out and ended up blocking my entire family, which he admits now was kind of stupid on his part, but he was so angry that he hadn't given his actions much thought. Of course, he told me all of that in person, since the email itself was meant to be as impersonal as possible, as he didn't want it to be traced back to him, but I did figure it out. The proof that he'd attached were a bunch of screenshots of emails between my sister and Frank where they were discussing how easy it is to fool Pete, and were full of confessions of love and plans for where they were going to meet next. There was no way she could deny any of this, because she'd even signed off in the emails with her middle name, which not many people are aware of. I had her dead to rights. I figured out that it must have been Pete who'd sent me this email after I combed through Liza's Facebook friends, because my gut feeling told me that this definitely had something to do with social media, and when I was finally able to find Pete in her list, I got in touch with him. We decided to meet a few days ago, and he told me that he'd found out about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who'd met him a couple of years back. I'd told her to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was kicking myself for it when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she probably would have told Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence ages ago. Anyway, they'd run into each other a couple of years ago, and she'd ended up asking him about the divorce, so they got to talking, and finally, he'd also learned what Hannah had told us. He confessed that he'd wanted to talk to me about it and tell me the truth, but didn't because he felt weird. I swear, if Pete wasn't so easily embarrassed, my life would have been a lot easier to deal with. I did forgive him though, since I needed his help to absolutely destroy my sister, and I knew he'd be on board with it as well. Hannah had definitely been lying to my parents so she'd have financial support during her divorce, and had even thrown me under the bus for good measure because she'd known that one conversation with Emily and I'd know the truth. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that someone, especially someone who was related to me by blood, could be this selfish. I'm sure she'd never bothered to set the record straight either, and my parents had just lapped up whatever lies she'd been feeding them during her divorce. She'd known that if the truth about her being the cheater had been revealed to our parents, she would have been in big trouble, and she just couldn't risk that. Well, too bad, but it was finally out now, and I was going to use it to ruin her life just like she'd ruined mine all those years ago. I didn't know if my family lived in the same house since I hadn't visited them for 7 years, but as luck would have it, they hadn't moved. I confirmed with an old neighbor of mine before showing up, and was glad to learn that Hannah was still living with them as well. That wasn't very surprising to me because Hannah always had been a couch potato and hated doing any work herself, so if she had the option of living with her aging parents and making them do all the chores for her, she'd definitely do it. Anyway, 2 days back, Pete and I just showed up without warning at their house. My mom opened the door and we barely even gave her any time to register what was happening before we walked in. My dad and Hannah were also present in the living room, and we were one happy family again, but not for long since their expressions soured just as soon as we entered. My dad began to threaten us immediately and said that he'd call the cops if we didn't get the hell out of his house, and I shot right back, saying that he was free to do whatever he wanted to, but only after he'd read the documents that we were about to show them. My parents looked incredibly confused, but Hannah looked like she was gonna barf and excused herself so that she could go to her room. I thought she was trying to escape, but there was no point in doing so anyway. Pete went on to show the divorce documents and the screenshots of Hannah and Frank's emails while I explained the real story. Pete also told my parents how Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring, in the settlement because she couldn't afford to pay him the money since she's a high school teacher, so she had to sell the ring instead. My parents were already horrified by what we'd told them, and that was just the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my dad held out of their house. I didn't need to be told twice and left with Pete while my sister begged and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I had, all those years ago. This was karma at its best, and I couldn't be happier about it. It's been a couple of days since then, and my sister showed up at my place a few hours ago, demanding that I make things right with my parents immediately. I didn't even know how she found me, but I told her that I didn't owe her anything anymore. She'd ruined my life once, so I repaid her the favor and we were now fair and square. I guess she really had no pride left, because as soon as I said that, she started sobbing and accusing me of being a monster. I didn't care much for her drama, though, and shut the door while she continued to sob relentlessly. I just put my headphones on and listened to music while Liza, my fiancée, worked in her study so neither of us would be disturbed. After a while, Hannah finally left us alone, but she'd left a message with a marker on my door to remind me that I was nothing but a revengeful monster. I don't see anything wrong with what I did, very frankly, and don't feel sorry in the least, but Hannah seems pretty convinced that I'm the villain here, somehow. I just did to her what she'd done to me several years ago, except that I told the truth while she did nothing except lie and throw me under the bus. So what do you guys think? Ida for ruining my sister's life and getting her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. So, Hannah has still been bothering me even though a whole week has passed since she got kicked out. I had to threaten her with the fear of cops when she called me for the 14th time today, and only then did she stop. I don't even know how she managed to find my phone number and address, but I'm least interested in that right now. Hannah's trying to make me feel sympathetic towards her because I guess a school teacher's salary isn't enough for her to live on, but I don't think that's true, and she's just upset that she has to look for a place and pay for her own rent, electricity, and groceries now that our parents have kicked her out, so I don't feel too sorry for her. And in case you guys were wondering, yes, I did block her number several times, but I guess she's making her friends add me to conference calls, so there's no point. As for my parents, they're just as bad, if not worse than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post about my engagement as well. So now, they want to be part of my life once more and even express their desire to attend my wedding. They haven't apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to just invite them to my wedding, which is supposed to be a really important day for me. I don't understand where these people find the guts to say crap like this, but at least I'm not responding to any of it. Liza and I have had a field day reading their texts because there's really just no way they're for real right now. It's all just really sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house yet again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to leave for work, but she stopped me by throwing herself across the hood of my car and refused to budge until I spoke to her. It was pretty exasperating, and I ended up actually calling the police this time. They took her away while she screamed and cried and tried her best to show me as the bad guy here, but unfortunately, nobody was buying her sad girl act here. It took some time to press charges against her, but as soon as I got it done, I left for work because I didn't want to let this little incident ruin my day. I was sure my parents would bail her out anyway since she was their favorite, and I turned out to be right as well. My parents, after bailing her out, sent me a lengthy text about how I was being way too harsh on them for an honest mistake that they'd made almost a decade ago. It was hilarious because nothing about what my sister and parents had put me through was either honest or even a mistake. They knew what they were doing and were definitely aware of how cruel they were, but that didn't stop them from throwing me out onto the street in spite of knowing that I had no other place to go. So now that I can do the same to them, I don't see a reason to be forgiving and kind. I texted my parents back saying that they'd lost any right to tell me what I could and couldn't do 7 years ago, so they'd better stop deluding themselves. I haven't blocked them yet since I haven't had the time to check my messages, but I will, soon. Hopefully, then I'll be rid of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got back home from work and checked my socials, only to see that my parents had yet again sent me another long message. Liza and I went through it together, and I swear, this was the funniest thing I've ever read. I guess the poor folks don't even know that I'm not even hurt by anything they say or do now. I'm just laughing at how delusional and pathetic they are. Apparently, they still believe that we're family and told me that they've taken Hannah back in with them and have decided that both their kids deserve a second chance. As if I'd ever been in the wrong at all. So while they'd taken my sister back in, they also expected me and Liza to come to their house sometime soon for dinner, and so we could sort out our differences in a civilized manner before the wedding. Bold of them to assume that I'd even want them at my wedding in the first place. We had a good laugh about their stupid message, and after that, I wrote right back saying that I wasn't interested in the slightest in anything that they'd invited us to and was just fine living away from them like I had for these past 7 years. They'd shown me that I was better off without them, and I was forever going to be thankful for that. I didn't need them at all anymore, and neither did I want their so-called forgiveness, so they could peacefully continue to play happy family with my sister like they had been so far. With that last text, I blocked them once and for all because I didn't even want the laughs anymore. I was done and I was out. I'm sure they'll try to get back in touch with me one way or another soon, but too bad for them. I'm not having it anymore. Liza is the only family I need now, and I'm happy with just her. My parents and my sister have unfortunately never been able to look beyond themselves, and I highly doubt that they ever will, so the next time they get in touch with me, they'll be speaking to my lawyer as well, and that's a promise. Caught my wife cheating with the man she hired to fix our fence, so I divorced her. I don't know what to do. I'm sad. Terrified. Having horrible thoughts. I'm not a perfect man. But I thought I had the perfect life. I'm in the National Guard, but work full-time in big industry. I make over 6 figures a year. I work out. I built my own house. Built my own small farm. I've been with my STBX for 11 years, we finally got married 2 years ago. I just returned from a combat deployment. We were ready to have kids. I discovered she was with a man she hired to fix our fence while I was gone for over 6 months. They had unprotected sex numerous times. She fell in love with him. She did things and felt things with him she never did with me. She found her small town cowboy she always wanted. I'm not a cowboy. She doesn't know that I know about the extreme depth of their infidelity. She has acted weird ever since I've been home. Claiming she lived for a year by herself and she's adjusted to me being gone. The real reason I think is that she's in love with him, but only stays with me because I never left her. That she knows I'm a good provider and protector. He's just a younger, hot cowboy who is married and has kids and fucks clients. What did I do wrong? I know I have to work on my vulnerability. But this hurts so fucking bad. She talked about having kids with him and running away together. She's living this double life and pretending everything is fine. She's planning our planting season this year. We bought more chickens. She talks about having children with me and scheduling doctor's appointments. She hasn't realized how utterly broken I am as I hide behind the severe stoicism the military taught me. I've spoken with my best friend about it. Discussed the details. He thinks I should file for divorce and kick her out. He says if I try to fix it with her, we can't be friends. Part of my Catholic nature, we weren't married in the Catholic Church, thinks I can fix this and make it work. I don't think it's possible. What will happen if I deploy again? I don't want to start over. I'm in my mid-30s and feel like I'm running out of time to have a dedicated wife and a farm full of kids who I want to raise to be great Americans. All I can do is cry in silence and keep the barrel of my pistol out of my mouth while I try to figure out how to approach her and have this discussion. I don't know how to start over. I don't know how to let go. I thought I was the strongest man I knew. I'm broken in half and I'm lost. Please God, help me. Update 1. I broke down crying randomly 3 times driving to work this morning listening to the Bible in a Year podcast when Father Mike was praying for those trying to have children. The last time I cried was 2010 when my friend got killed returning from Iraq. Maybe this is acceptance. I scheduled a consultation with 2 lawyers to start filing procedures. I don't think this is savable. She has no remorse. I think she's a sociopath. I have been unable to schedule any in-person mental health sessions. First appointments are over 3 weeks out. That's bullshit. I'm going to try and find a priest from my local parish. I told my mom and my closest friends today. That was really hard. I haven't confronted her yet, but I'm making plans. Update 2. I have 2 legal consultations today to get filing for divorce. I hired a PI based on the suggestions from you all. This guy has 5 aliases, a suspended license, and 1 conviction on his record. He's 28 years old, married with 2 kids and lives 15 minutes from my house. I woke up in a panic attack last night while she slept next to me and started bawling my eyes out saying I'm sorry. She said, hey, maybe it's the workout supplements you're taking or it's from something you picked up overseas. I've never seen you this upset, maybe you should go see a doctor. Either she's playing me super hard or she's as clueless as a cat with a food dish in front of her face. Her birthday is January 29th, but I'm working at the refinery that week. So, she's going to Key West with her friends from February 3rd to 6th. I'm planning on confronting her when she comes back, presenting her with the divorce papers, and asking her to leave to go live with her mom or sister. I love her so much, I need to let her go. This is the other God is revealing to me. This was supposed to happen and he gave me the grace to find the evidence of the infidelity to prevent me from having children with her. You guys and gals have been so supportive and it's helped me bring me out of a dark place. Thank you so much. I'll keep updating as it goes. Update 3. I'm working night shift this week at the refinery, 1345. I got a message from the PI I hired that she had lunch with him at Qdoba while I was sleeping and she said she was out shopping. When she got back I asked her if she went out for lunch. She said she only went to Costco and Maurice's. She was blatantly lying to my face again, straight face like everything was normal. She just tried telling me that I just started crying while the song The End by Elliot Greer was playing because of my pre-workout I was drinking since I always work out before shift. I was screaming fuck you while repping out 315 pounds in 5 sets of 10. She just said wow you get frustrated when you work out. In my CrossFit gym in the garage. Either this lady is fucking with me or she really thinks she's getting away with this. The plan is to confront her February 7th when she returns. I'm in the process of getting all the paperwork filed and set so I can be in position of favorability and I can have closure on my terms. Update 4. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted her this morning. Notified her whole family, as well as the cowboy's now pregnant wife, and his family. She says she can change and wants this life. She didn't tell me because she knew it would hurt me. It was just a fling. It didn't mean anything. That guy lied to her and she didn't know better. She left for her sister's house. I stuck to my principles. Her sister and family have resulted to gaslighting me. Apparently I caused this. Unprotected sex with another guy is apparently dismissive when I'm emotionally unavailable. She told Cowboy's wife it was all made up. Cowboy and his wife have decided to work it out. She's pregnant with his third child. My wife's family said, well, family first, implying I'm not part of their family and they will side with my wife versus trying to help us heal. She scoffed when I recommended she go to individual therapy and try to work this out. She thinks it's all going to be fine and that I can be manipulated into staying. Update 5. She signed the paperwork and I filed for divorce this morning. We had a long talk. She said she 10/10 wants to fix this marriage and will put in the effort over the next 89 days to prove that. I'm skeptical. She's looking for houses in Texas and trying to transfer with her company. I hope she gets the position. It will make this a lot easier. Update 6. Today, May 11th, the divorce is final. I ended up with the house, she's moving to Texas and transferring jobs. She still has no remorse, and never took responsibility for throwing our life away. I still can't update my last post, so here is an update in a new post. Thank you to everyone who kept tabs on me. This still hurts, but I'm still moving forward. Deployment was tough. Coming home to a situation that ended in a divorce was even worse. The past several months since I have returned home from the Middle East has been the most difficult season of my life. Of course there are two sides to every story, but this particular situation absolutely broke me as a man. It broke me down to the foundation I had come to build my life on. I had to rediscover my vulnerability. Sometimes it's okay to ask for help, and admit you cannot handle something on your own. Grief demands a witness, as Dr. John Deloney always says. This was pain I could not simply internalize. The faith I rediscovered overseas has carried me throughout this, and I am very thankful for that. Trying to determine why people do evil things, or commit betrayal, have been difficult questions that I still don't have answers to. Evil hates the light, and truth is revealed by the light. Everything happens for a reason, even if that reason was to tell you that having a family and a life with someone in particular was not the intended path you were supposed to be walking on. If it wasn't for my faith, my closest friends from the academy, friends and family back home, and the men and women I deployed with constantly checking in on me, I'm not sure where I'd be right now. To those you kept calling and texting when I was in some very dark places, thank you.